What has grabbed your heart so strongly around the education arena?
Yeah, so I think that education and entrepreneurship are the two biggest drivers of prosperity for societies.
Peter Saddington, your big game hunter. And guys, we have our sights on someone special today. Only a mother could invest in this idea.
Made this like super artistic.
That is actually absolutely correct. And that's a very, very astute assessment, actually.
True startup story, guys. You got it. Your company just got seed round financed. Congratulations. You're going to the moon. But now you have to scale. You found great talent out in California, New York, Georgia, and even Eastern Europe. So what communications platform will you be using to ensure your international team is always aligned? Well, the answer is easy. Slack.com for Teams. We've used Slack for all of our previous startups, and they've supported us in tremendous ways. And we want to give them a thanks today for supporting vchunting.com. Did you also know that Slack is a great tool for personal use? Yeah, I use my own personal Slack channel to drop in documents, notes, to-dos, and follow-ups to ensure that my workflow throughout the day is right on course. I promise you, if you try out slack.com for personal use, you'll end up using it for your team as well. Go to slack.com to check it out. Welcome everybody to another season of VC Hunting, where we find some of the most fantastic and interesting stories of venture capitalists. Today, guys, I have a great guest. It's Michael Staton, who is the partner at Learn Capital. Michael, thanks so much for joining the show.
Thanks, Peter. Thanks for having me.
Well, let's just jump right in. Tell us a little bit about your journey into venture capital and what is keeping you here today.
Yeah. Well, actually, I kind of stumbled into venture capital when young people ask me in a way where their eyes get really hopeful and they're like, tell me a story that sounds like I can go and do that story. I'm like, I took a path that is not followable. So I actually started as a high school teacher, and started doing some problem solving of my own as a teacher, which led me to try to start a company, which then got me hired at another startup. Like the work that I did trying to start a company and failing got me hired at another startup.
That's perfect.
And they moved me, they gave me a relocation bonus in 2007 to move from Houston, Texas to Palo Alto. At the time, I didn't even know where Palo Alto was. I had never heard of Palo Alto. I had heard of Stanford, but I had never heard of Palo Alto. So, and I had never heard of venture capital either. But within a year, I had essentially started my own company in the wake of the iPhone being launched. And at the time, Facebook platform was launched. And nowadays you can use Facebook on everything on the internet. And in many countries, Facebook is the internet. But in 2007, they launched a way to develop applications that Facebook users could use within Facebook, within the walled garden of Facebook. That's how it was working. Anyway, so I started a company there, raised money from some of Facebook's early backers, Peter Thiel and Founders Fund, and tried to build an education company out of that. Took that through several rounds of funding, and basically just the timing was that I was an education entrepreneur, apparently before it was a cool idea to be an education entrepreneur. And it wasn't necessarily because I saw it before anybody else. It was because it was the only thing I knew, right? I was solving problems I understood. And because I was early as an education entrepreneur, a lot of new entrepreneurs coming into the space wanted to meet with me to see if I could help them, network with VCs. So I ended up being one of the people that you would try to get coffee with if you wanted to be introduced to all the other VCs.
You were the man of that niche, huh?
Yeah, so I kind of became one of the coffee boys of that niche. And I was sending Learn Capital so many deals that they kind of noticed. Right. And when I handed the CEO role over to somebody with more experience than me, which was very eye-opening, I essentially had time to help, be in venture capital, basically. So I kind of part-timed in venture capital.
You weren't a scout, were you? I mean, you said you were sending them deals. So were you...
I was essentially a scout / venture partner, but informally. And then it became more formal, but it actually became formal with New Schools Venture Fund, not with Learn Capital. But then I wanted to start another company, and I asked to get paid as an entrepreneur in residence, and Learn Capital said yes, and New Schools Venture Fund said they didn't have any money.
Oh, well, that's pretty unique. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Well, that's a really interesting story. This would be the first time, and obviously we did a little bit of research on you ahead of time, but this would probably be the first story I've ever heard of a school teacher moving into venture capital. And certainly education is a deep thing in your heart. And so I had a question here is what about education? What about education grips your heart so strongly that moving from being a practitioner, a teacher in the system, to now funding ed tech and these types of things? What has grabbed your heart so strongly around the education arena?
Yeah. So I think that education and entrepreneurship are the two biggest drivers of prosperity for societies. When I was a teenager, I got very idealistic, and I wanted to work for the World Bank and help solve for world poverty. And, if you look at the UN Sustainable Development Goals, like that's where my head was at that time. As a matter of fact, Jeffrey Sachs, the main person behind the SDGs, he was like a personal hero of mine. But as I studied more about economic development, I just started to believe more and more in education and entrepreneurship are really the two biggest levers that have multiplier effects on everything else. You can't get a job as an entrepreneur. You have to, start something, but you can't get a job as an educator. So I got a job as an educator and thought I would figure it out from there. Still haven't figured anything out, but opportunities keep on opening up. So.
Well, you certainly have a really interesting history, and I scrolled through your entire LinkedIn, and I found a really interesting nugget there on LinkedIn at the very bottom. It says, and this is the very beginning of your career history of sorts as a U.S. history teacher. I quote here from your LinkedIn. You said, "I tried my best to be an awesome teacher at Bel Air High School. I was certainly the most challenging, if not the favorite." So unpack that a little bit for me. Is it a humble brag that you were the favorite? When I first saw that, I was like, daggone, I can't think of a single U.S. history teacher that I thought was epic. And so you must have something completely different. Tell us, unpack that a little bit.
I'm not sure if I was epic, but
you were this challenging.
So the first semester that I was teaching, I taught for 3 years. The first semester that I was teaching, I tried to be likable and tried to have high expectations from my students. And I find that that's actually really, really hard to juggle. Like some teachers can juggle that. I couldn't juggle that. It's, so I decided I would rather be feared than loved, and that I would rather have obscenely high expectations for my students and kind of earn their respect in the long run that way,
I see. So there is a method to the madness. Now that I think about it, with some of my most rigorous, tough professors of all time, they probably had a worldview similar to you. Like, let's go the Caesar route. You will respect me because you fear me, because I'm gonna go hard. I'm gonna go deep and
I'm going to push you. Right?
Yeah, push you to learn.
And I think the best students respect you more if you push them to do their best. I think most students appreciate it as well. Obviously, there are some students that don't really like being pushed, at least not in my class anyway. So what I meant by, if not the favorite, I had some students that thought that I was their favorite teacher, but I think most just realized that I created a grind for them. They just had to work their ass off,
Do you think it was also, and this isn't a dig, I'm just a curious cat. Do you think it was also is that was kind of your first foray into the working world, and you're like, I got to prove myself, or was it really like hey, this whole being likable is just not being likable, and being able to teach just not working out for my personality? Is that fair?
No, it's more, I think everybody wants to do a good job in whatever lot in life they've ended up in, you know? So if you're interviewing people in venture capital, you're probably asking yourself questions all the time. How can I do this better? How can I be a better interviewer? So I think most people have that itch to just constantly improve. And I had that itch, and the way that I found that I could improve was essentially to have higher expectations and suffer not being liked by everyone. So
that's fair enough. And I did a lot of research on your.
It's somewhat true in venture capital as well, by the way. Like, I think that entrepreneurs, generally speaking, want you to push them harder, not necessarily want to be friends with you. Though I walk that line much better with entrepreneurs than I did with 16-year-olds.
Well, I will agree. I would tentatively agree with you. I think a lot of entrepreneurs are just so green, you know, like, you know, especially first-time founders. Obviously, that's easy. It's an easy and obvious one. But so many of them, they need guidance. They need direction. They need someone that can fill in a lot of the blanks for the lack of experience. And so, being highly assertive, highly engaging, and walking the line with them as a VC is a huge value add that I think a lot of the larger VCs, it's hard to balance that, right?
It can be. Yeah.
So I spent some time on your edumorphology site, which hasn't been updated.
I haven't done anything on that.
But it actually belies, going through that, it actually belies a lot of your problem solving kind of, you know, initiativeness. And on December 13th, 2013, on the blog of Edumorphology, you were unbundling higher education, and you had an intriguing 4-quadrant dissection of the educational world as I understood it. Could you unpack that a little bit for me, and what the problem that you were trying to solve with all of that?
Sure. I think it was Jim Breyer that said all of innovation is either unbundling or rebundling. And I think that that provides a useful framework for how to think about what's happening in education, or also in other sectors as well. Essentially, whenever there's a set of services that come as they call it a bundle, it's kind of hard to not use the word bundle, but you know, they all come together in one package. What innovators can do is figure out what are the things that come in that package that maybe aren't that great, or could be improved upon quite extensively. And they tend to focus on one of those value propositions that comes in the whole bundle. So
I see.
When people say education, they're actually talking about a whole suite of services and experiences that come in the bundle. And a thing called school or university, there's an institutional provider of that bundle of services that is called an education.
Right.
So I think to say, how can we innovate in education is actually an unhelpful question.
Oh, really?
Because I think it's too vague, right? You know, I think you can innovate on how people match with mentors. I think you can innovate on how you assess student learning real time. I think you can innovate on like the engaging aspects of media formats. I think you can innovate on actionable behavior feedback for kids. I think you can innovate on kids having a better understanding of time management and how to do what are called executive functioning tasks.
And money too, and finances.
Sure, yeah. I
that's
actually
maybe
had a call about that this morning.
Maybe that's too specific though.
Right. Well, I mean, you do see a lot of innovators that are becoming subject matter go-tos. So, you know, if you want to learn math content, you know, Brilliant is like the best place to learn math content.
I see.
If you want to learn maker subject areas, DIY is, you know, there's like Code Learning, Code HS, and Code Academy. So there are a lot of subject matter go-tos, but generally speaking, you could innovate on any kind of value proposition or service once you peel it off and look at it from an unbundled perspective. And then what's happening now is there are so many different things you can learn from that people are rebundling it on the hind end and saying, well, you know, if you take this grab bag of cool things you can do on the internet for less than $25 a month, you can recreate, you know, different learning experiences around that. So that's happening too.
Did you know that there's even more value than just audio or video? Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok at VC Hunting, and make sure to sign up for the VC Hunting newsletter, where you'll be able to get weekly news on venture capital, startups, founder stories, and the occasional wisdom extracted from Peter's brain. Go to vchunting.com to sign up. And now back to the episode.
I love this. And if I could kind of use your word bundle, if I could bundle up a lot of what you just said there seems to be an increased segmentation within those different quadrant areas in terms of services, tools, technology, et cetera, et cetera. And so it's really cool. By the way, do you know Danielle Strockman from 1517 Fund?
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that. She actually just invested in the startup that I'm incubating. So good
really?
timing for that. Yeah.
Really? Yeah. I had her on the show. As you well know, she's a huge advocate of finding the education beyond the walls of the usual and traditional. Can you share what investment she just made in one of your this thing?
Yeah. So I'm in the process of trying to launch something called CoLearn or colearn.club. It's definitely embarrassing right now, but hopefully it'll get good soon. And it's the idea is that
what does embarrassing mean?
Oh, it's just like it's not as beautiful or as feature rich as I want it to be. Yeah.
Well.
So, but anyway, the idea is to rebundle all of the things that kids are doing on their own and families are doing together, and help them see it as a more holistic learning experience and serve primarily homeschooling families, which we want to rebrand as co-learning, and then make co-learning so easy and fruitful that more parents that are struggling with school options or whose kids are just not fitting in at school or not enjoying it, they can just do it themselves, right?
I think the timing is perfect.
I think your brother is also got kids at home, right?
Yes. He's also doing the what I'm going to call now co-learning instead of homeschooling.
Yeah, that's right. He's co-learning. I think a lot of parents who are pretty well educated and have their own ideas about education are looking at schools right now and being like, really? I mean, come on. We've been having the same conversation for 50 years about how to improve schools, and as far as I can tell, I'm not sure how much progress we've made. So.
Yeah, and I can agree with you. Actually, I have 3 graduate degrees, so I think I have a very unique opinion of how valueless those types of educations can be, depending. Right? I don't want to have everyone be offended here and write you comments saying that, oh, I got a master's degree, and you're saying it's worthless. No, it's not. It really depends on right what you want to do and what you want to. But I got 3 useless. Social science master's degrees and $1 million worth of debt. So I can speak on the other side of that. You know, what's really interesting about this startup idea that with CoLearn .club is it's perfect for the times, especially with COVID and distance learning in a remote world. I'm a big trumpeter of a remote world that's growing and only growing. I believe we're going to have even more of that as we move forward. This type of thing is really coming into the minds of traditional thinkers and saying, hey, we really need to start looking at technology as a mechanism to educate the youth and not have them be in these walls. And so the question here is that when it comes to this burgeoning, I wouldn't say ridiculously super growing, or if you correct me if I'm wrong, but this burgeoning need and interest of co-learning and homeschooling, what do you think needs to improve so that adoption curve can go faster?
Yeah, I think it just needs to be less work for parents, or I should say it needs to be more. There needs to be more throughput for parents. So the amount of time and energy that they put in is more productive in terms of actually having learning gains for their kids, or having, at the very least, fun-filled family adventures, right, with their kids. You know, if you're not going to be learning a lot, at least have fun together. Right now, most parents that have one or more kids outside of the school systems, it really is like a full-time job for one parent. So generally speaking, 98% of the time, one parent's not working and they're spending more than a full-time job worth of effort to homeschool their kids or to co-learn. And, you know, it's just not going to be accessible to more families until it's not a full-time job to do this. Right. So that's basically it. We want to give parents the tools that they need to make it dramatically easier to create great learning experiences for their families.
Absolutely. Well, that's a great segue into a tweet that you made on November 15th, 2008. So we're going way back, my friend.
Oh gosh.
On November
That's back when I
15th,
used Twitter.
it's right when you began, actually. November 15th, 2008, you were tweeting at Zach Klein. And you said, I've increasingly become incapable of doing work at home. Now, that was 12 years ago. And now with everything that's going on, have you learned a couple things? Is it possible for you to work at home now these days?
Yeah, as a matter of fact. And
what are some of your tips?
And I only seem to get a lot done on Saturdays and Sundays at home. Because in venture capital, one of the side effects of being in venture capital is you become a go-to person for a lot of people. And your email inbox just starts to create little bids on your time. There's lots of portfolio companies.
You're handing out money, Michael, you kind of need to underside.
Yeah, well, I'm not handing out money. I'm just, running a decision pipeline, which is very different, actually. And a lot more work. It would be easier if we just handed out money. Anyway, but point is, every day I open my inbox and there's a lot going on in there. And I find that it's very hard to get anything productive done without at least 3 hours of dedicated focus time. So one thing that I've done is I basically don't take meetings in the morning because my mind is it has enough computational power to solve problems and be creative from about 7 a.m. to about noon. After that, I'm pretty useless. So I have my conversations with people after that because all I have to do is just, take notes and try to be charming. So I moved all my meetings to the afternoon. Generally speaking, on Saturday and Sunday mornings, I spend between 3 to 6 hours in like pretty deep work focus. But I'm still in the same position, which is there's so much more I want to do than I have time to do it. And that is an anxiety that has only increased as time has gone on. So I might make a similar tweet now, which is that I'm still struggling to, find the time and energy to get done all the things that I would like to get done. And being at home or being at the office doesn't seem to matter either way.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to give you any advice, but I would say probably need to have a conversation with someone important to you about your own time management. And the reason I say that is because they can tell you the holes in your life. They can say, look, it's clear that you're burning that candle at both ends, or you're not. I'm making this up. You're not, being present with your kids or your wife. These types of people can help. So I don't know. You might need to talk to someone who can say, Michael, you're fucking up.
Yeah, well, I don't think I'm fucking anything up, but I think that
sustainability is a big deal.
It's been very helpful to use kind of Buddhist and meditative kind of concepts to essentially just accept the fact that you are always going to be able to think up more great things than you will have time to do, right? And I think as I've gotten older, I've gotten more comfortable with that. And being more comfortable with that has, I think, been the most productive gain in the sense that, like, I'm okay. All my great ideas will not be executed on, but some of them will, and that's fine. Yeah. And
so you're currently working on colearn.club. It's not beautiful just yet, but indulge us a little bit. What are some of the more bundled features, if I'm taking a guess here? What are some of the bundled functions and features that you're really excited about promoting and building for the the co-learn world that's growing?
Sure. Well, is this supposed to be about venture capital, or is this supposed to be about my startup? I'm happy to talk about either.
It's supposed to be about you.
Oh, it's about me. Huh. How uninteresting. So this is a case where I had a lot of parents come to me and say that they were looking for something for like a long time, for like 7 years. I would have parents that come to me and say, my kid's not in school. We do all these cool creative projects. We're looking for these kind of tools. And I kept my eye out for a very long time trying to find something that I thought was actually gonna make it a lot easier for parents to do this and to do a great job at this at home. And I just didn't see anything that had the approach that I thought would work. And there are great companies like Outschool and Prinda and DIY and, you know, great organizations like Khan Academy, and the list kind of keeps going on. There's Zip Homeschooler, there's a bunch of really awesome stuff going on, but I just didn't see anybody that was taking an approach from the point of view of a parent that has to figure out, what are we doing today? What are we doing this week? What are we doing this month? What are we doing for the fall? How do you balance your week appropriately? How do you make sure you're getting enough time in for your academic fundamentals or pursuing passions versus play, free range play? How do you balance social time versus, you know, focus time alone? All that stuff. How do you choose between different resources? So, you know, what I'm trying to do is leverage Pinterest and eventually Yelp and Foursquare and things like this to make it really, really easy, like drag and drop style, to fill up your week, month, fall with stuff that is going to be relevant for you and your child. So at this point, it's kind of a drag and drop calendaring system, but it'll get a little bit more sophisticated than that over time.
That's awesome. I mean, there's a lot of value in aggregation, right? There's a lot of value in tools that can connect and integrate with all these other disparate tools and make it easy for an individual to have one dashboard. Here's everything that I can do. Right.
So we want to calendarize and dashboard being outside of school, essentially. And if you can co-learn and go to school at the same time. As a matter of fact, I think I was talking to a friend of mine who is an investor out of Singapore, and he was like, all Asian families need this, and they're going to school because they're trying to like organize every hour outside of school. And, you know, you can either go to one kind of after school program, or you could do a la carte and kind of do a choose your own adventure. If you do a choose your own adventure, you're running around like a chicken with your head cut off all week, trying to like make sure that the kid's showing up for piano lessons here and math tutorials over here, and then stops by at grandma's house where like they read a book together or something. I don't know. But the point is, there's a lot of stuff that parents have to worry about. I want to make it much easier to not have to worry about having learning plans for your kids.
I love it. And I will say, having not been born here, born in Korea and living in Japan as well, the educational system, yes, Asian parents need this because for some reason culturally, and I'll make it very simple, for some reason culturally, getting a 4.6 GPA in school doesn't cut it.
It's not enough.
That's why I have 3 master's degrees and I'm still not intelligent enough for my parents. They're still wondering when I'm going to become a doctor.
But you can make millions of dollars on Twitch, broadcasting your StarCraft talents, right?
You know what? The world is wacky. And so we'll end right there with one last quote. And it's so funny you brought up the word grandma, because that's what we're going to talk about. On December 21st on Twitter, 2008, going still back, you said, "Checking out Grandma, a church for the first time in years." What does that mean?
I don't actually know. That's probably a typo.
I've never heard of the Church of Grandma.
I probably was going to church with my grandma. My grandma went to the same church all her life. Okay. Literally like the church that she was, christened in all the way to age 95. Wow. Pretty much weekly for 95 years. And so whenever I would visit my grandma, my mom would be like, make sure you go to church with your grandma. Makes her very excited. So I was probably just trying to be a good grandson and had a typo when I was posting it on Twitter. I mean, that was back when Twitter was like, okay, what am I using Twitter for? Am I like broadcasting what I'm doing right now? Because that was kind of the original vision, was like, oh, what if you could just kind of
food and cats,
whatever you're doing, I'm over here, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, right? And I'm not sure how many people really predicted that Twitter would be a gigantic content and media empire that the president of the United States would use to manage a 1 million person bureaucracy. So
Amazing.
yeah,
Amazing times.
At the time, I was just saying what I was doing right now.
Well, I appreciate it. I read it.
Now I've got to be like a thought leader. However, you're supposed to be a thought leader.
However,
I'm leaning on people like you, Peter, to get my thought leader status.
Oh, really? Oh, well, shit.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm just a guy who loves to have great conversations with VCs and the technology world. Well, thanks so much, Michael. I'm going to give you the last word here. Where can people out there in the internet land find out more about you and more about Learn Capital?
Well, funnily enough, I actually think messaging me on LinkedIn or Twitter is better to get in touch with me than sending me an email. You can send me an email, michael@learncapital.com. I tend to get so much that when I sit down to process what's going on in my email, I don't get to everything. And so there are people I should get back to that just kind of sink into the bottom and then never come back up to the top. Whereas because I get much fewer messages on LinkedIn and Twitter, it's just easier to manage and make actionable what that person is asking from me. Generally speaking, if people want feedback on their business ideas, it's helpful if you send a deck ahead of time before you ask for time. So that way I can actually get my head around it and understand how to best approach the conversation. So, awesome. But anyway, no, I still want to be helpful for entrepreneurs. Obviously I need to focus full time as an entrepreneur, moving into the next couple months, but always happy to help, right? Isn't that what VCs are here to help?
How can I be helpful?
How can I help, right? Yeah, just let me know how I can help. Okay.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, just let me know how I can be helpful. Well, I'll make sure, since we syndicate worldwide, I'll make sure that we have more Asian moms slide into your LinkedIn and DMs on Twitter than you've ever experienced before. It'll be the inundation of Asians for you. Well, Michael, thanks so much.
And if you need to refilm this so that we actually talk about VC, I'm happy to do that. So
no, this is an opportunity to know the people behind the money, because money is commoditized. We can get that anywhere.
Okay.
That we want to know about. Thanks so much, Michael, for the opportunity. We'll talk again soon.
Thanks, Peter. Bye.
Wow. Well, that was a fun conversation with Michael Staton of Learn Capital. I always enjoy these types of conversations with people who have been in the educational space. Now, I don't hawk it so much, but having been deep in the educational space as a student, getting 3 master's degrees and having a wife who has several as well, with, as you probably heard, with millions of dollars worth of debt overall. I have a unique perspective on the educational world, and I love talking to people who are trying to make things happen, trying to make positive change happen in the educational world. As you remember hearing from Michael here, he said, we've been having the same conversation about how to improve education for 50 plus years. And in reality, it's still brick and mortar. And we still have professors that are teaching kids stuff that they don't actually do. Think about this. It's a very powerful idea. I think I realized this as I was going through my 3rd master's program, is that I came to a realization, and I don't know what it was that the professor said, but the professor said something and I was like, he's telling us that this is something that it's important for us to do or to be, but there's no way he's doing this as a practitioner. And that was a moment when I knew that education there was a rift happening. There was a break in education. And so it's great just talking to guys like Michael who are trying to change the educational game. As we're going through the events of COVID and coronavirus and remote work and remote school and homeschooling is becoming a bigger and bigger idea and bigger topic these days in conversation, it makes sense that Michael is building this co-learn.club to help out with this burgeoning and growing market opportunity for the homeschooling world. I think it's important. Actually, to be quite frank, my wife and I and our 2 little youngins are seriously considering really going into homeschool and making it a real thing. We've been through enough education and we have enough experiences and we have an opinion about the world. We have deep opinions about how the world works and what is valuable terms of being a good human being, these types of things. And so maybe just maybe this whole COVID thing and this whole, stay at home and social distancing will actually be a boon to this whole idea of co-learning and homeschooling. I really appreciated his story of coming up from being a U.S. history high school teacher to where he is now. It's super unique, and I'm really, really excited that he is going to continue to build, not just as a decision pipeline, as he said in the interview. He's a part of the decision pipeline in the VC game, but going back into entrepreneurship and actually building solutions for the world. I'm going to be keeping my eye on Michael, and I'm going to be really looking forward to seeing what comes out of this, because it could be a tool that maybe even I could use. Thanks so much, guys, for this awesome episode. I hope you enjoyed it just as much as I did. If you want more information in the field notes on this interview, find your way over to vchunting.com/Michael Staton. Yeah, this was a great interview, guys. We're going to have some great ones coming up. Booyah. Have a good one, my friends.